They fined my kid $30 for a chalk drawing on our own driveway. Defacement of community property, the notice said. Bold red stamp dated April 17th. 2 days later, a second envelope arrived. Failure to remit within 48 hours may trigger lien escalation. I remember the number printed bottom right, Rule 7.2.3, like it was carved into my ribs. Welcome to my channel. I'm Daniel Reeves, a civil engineer out of Franklin, North Carolina, and this one still burns when I tell it. If you're new here, hit subscribe so the next time someone weaponizes a rule book against a family, you'll know how to answer. And before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? When that first fine showed up, I thought it was a clerical glitch. Our HOA, Pine Hollow Estates, had always been persnickety. Trash cans, mailbox paint, grass length, but mostly manageable. Then the board changed hands last winter. A woman named Karen Leland, new president, started enforcing bylaws like a speed trap. I shrugged it off until the morning she cornered my daughter at the bus stop, wagging a finger and yelling, "Tell your father to pay the fine before you draw on my sidewalks again." Something inside me snapped, quiet but permanent. I'd lost my wife 2 years earlier, cancer, and the last thing my 10-year-old needed was a stranger humiliating her in public. I promised myself I'd fight this the right way, every letter lawful, every word documented. That evening, I laid the violation notice on my kitchen counter beneath the under-cabinet light. The paper smelled of toner and cheap glue. I opened a binder, labeled it Pine Hollow Dispute 2025, and slid the first sheet into a clear sleeve. A beginning. By Saturday, I'd read our 186-page covenants, conditions, and restrictions 3 times. I found a clause I'd never noticed. Any common area drawing under 24 square inches not permanently affixed, it shall not constitute defacement. My kid's chalk son was about 12. I measured with a ruler. They were wrong. Flat wrong. I emailed the property manager, quoting the clause verbatim. He replied with 2 lines. Refer to board for interpretation. Please remit to avoid further action. No signature block, no courtesy. That's when I realized the rot ran deeper than one overzealous president. Sunday morning, my neighbor Mark Beasley leaned over the fence. "You too?" he said. "They cited me for having my recycling bin out 10 minutes early." Mark's the type who sharpens mower blades for fun, meticulous guy. If they were hassling him, no one was safe. We compared notes, literally. I copied his notice, logged the timestamps. Every fine was dated on a Friday, postmarked the following Tuesday, shaving just enough days to shorten the appeal window. Clever. That's when the engineer in me woke up. Pattern detection, time intervals, probabilities. I started mapping violations across our 48-home subdivision. Within a week, my spreadsheet showed 31 homeowners fined for minor offenses since February, totaling $4,830. Pre-Karen, the average quarterly total had been under $600, a 705% increase. That night, while my daughter slept, I sat on the porch with a legal pad and coffee gone cold. I wasn't chasing revenge. I wanted my community back. My wife used to say, "A neighborhood is a promise we make to our kids about what safe looks like." Pine Hollow had broken that promise. The next day, I drove to the county recorder's office. Smell of dust and paper toner thick in the air. I requested the HOA's incorporation documents, the master deed, and every amendment filed since 2015. The clerk slid a stack 2 inches thick through the glass. "You'll need a flash drive if you want copies," she said. Back home, I printed every page. On page 48 of the 2018 amendment, in 8-point font, was a signature block read, "Authorized Agent, Leland Realty Development, LLC." Same last name as our HOA president. My pulse quickened. Karen wasn't just a volunteer. She was a developer holdover, the kind who profits twice, first selling lots, then controlling the rules. That conflict of interest was a powder keg waiting for spark. Still, I had to move carefully. People underestimate how fast rumor becomes retaliation in HOA land. I documented everything, time-stamped my photos, stored digital copies on an external drive. When Monday rolled around, I attended the open board meeting in the clubhouse, smell of lemon cleaner and stale coffee thick in the air. Karen presided like a queen behind folding tables. "Next item, unauthorized driveway art at Lot 22, she said, eyes cutting toward me. I raised my hand. Section 7.2.3 defines temporary chalk under 24 square inches as exempt. She smirked. Board reserves interpretive authority, Mr. Reeves. Interpretive doesn't mean arbitrary. I slid a printed copy of the clause across the table. It means consistent. Murmurs rippled through the audience. She banged the gavel. Fine stands. Next item. I felt the heat crawl up my neck but kept my tone flat. Then I'll proceed under Article 14 grievance rights. She laughed lightly, as if I'd quoted scripture at a poker game. You're welcome to waste your time. Walking home, gravel crunching under my boots, I knew this was no longer about $30. It was about control, about a woman who thought no one would bother reading the fine print. That night, I added a new line to my binder. Objective. Verify legal and financial compliance of Pine Hollow Estates, HOA Inc., Knowledge Nugget Number 1. Under North Carolina General Statute, Par 47F 3-107.1, an HOA may not impose fines without a properly noticed hearing and recorded minutes. Our board hadn't held one in 6 months. I smiled for the first time in weeks. The fight was on, and this time, every rule they loved was going to be my weapon. By midweek, I'd learned to keep a small recorder in my pocket. North Carolina's a one-party consent state, so as long as I was part of the conversation, it was legal. The first thing I caught was Karen telling the landscaper, "Start noting anyone whose lawn looks off-spec. We'll tag them." Her tone was sugar over vinegar. It played back like proof that power had gone to her head. Mark and I formed a quiet task force, half the cul-de-sac really. We'd meet on my porch after sunset with clipboards and LED headlamps, the hum of summer insects mixed with the scratch of pens as we logged evidence. Violation patterns, timestamps, overlapping signatures. By the 5th night we had a picture. The board was using selective enforcement to fund a reserve shortfall they'd never disclosed. Early Thursday, I requested the HOA's last 3 annual budgets under Article 5 transparency provisions. The treasurer replied, "Records are internal, not public." That was false, flatly. So I cited the statute again and attached a certified mail receipt request. No answer. I printed the emails, numbered them, and placed them in the binder under tab 2. A few neighbors grew nervous. "Danny, they'll come after your house," one whispered. I smiled, but felt the knot tighten behind my ribs. My mortgage balance was $211,600. I'd refinanced last fall after my wife's treatment drained savings. The idea of a lien scared me more than I wanted to admit. Still, silence was surrender. That Friday, I drove to Raleigh to meet Allison Tran, a real estate attorney known for HOA compliance work. She was sharp, mid-40s, hair in a twist, coffee thermos always in reach. "You've got 2 tracks, she said, clicking her pen. "Injunction for due process violation or financial audit via member petition. Both lawful, both loud." "I want lawful," I said. She leaned forward. "Then you'll need 10% of owners' signatures, 5 and homes in your case. File form MC37 with the clerk. Once it's stamped, they have 15 days to comply." Knowledge Nugget Number 2. Under North Carolina, HOA Statute, FAR 47F3-118, any member may demand financial records with 10% support. Failure to produce within 15 days can trigger civil penalties. I left her office lighter, like I finally had tools instead of anger. At home, I drafted a plain English summary for neighbors. We're not fighting the HOA, we're enforcing the law. Mark delivered copies door to door. By Sunday, 8 households signed. I notarized the petition at the UPS store. Ink pad smell, mechanical stamp thunk. Deadline clock started. 15 days. 2 days later, retaliation began. First, a courtesy inspection for uncut weeds. My yard was immaculate. Then a Facebook post from the HOA page hinting certain residents spreading misinformation. Comments filled fast. One read, "Some people just can't follow rules like the rest of us." Another, "Maybe he should move if he hates it here." I didn't reply. Instead, I screenshot everything, filed under digital evidence. Tab 3. Thursday evening, as I wheeled the trash to the curb, headlights flashed. A patrol car slowed, window rolling down. Officer Nunez, local beat cop, said quietly, "Got a wellness check request for this address. You all right?" My stomach turned. "Yeah. Who called?" He shrugged. "Came through Dispatch Anonymous, but code line matches HOA security vendor." They'd escalated to police harassment. I thanked him, recorded the time, 9:42 p.m., and wrote the incident number in my log. The next morning I called Allison. She listened, then said, "Keep your cool. Every false report strengthens your case." That night I told my daughter, "We're okay. Grown-ups sometimes forget fairness matters." She nodded but slept with her light on. In the following days, the board doubled fines on 3 more families. I visited each, showed them the statute. Confidence spread like current through copper. The binder grew heavier. Justice sometimes sounds like paper shuffling in plastic sleeves. Online, though, the smear kept growing. They called us the dissidents. Mark laughed. Could have picked something cooler. But behind the humor was fear. Fear that our own community wanted us gone. I reminded everyone, law beats rumor. We'd meet in the open, invite questions, stay calm. Karen wanted chaos. I wanted recordable civility. One evening at sunset, while photographing a notice pinned to Mark's door, I caught Karen's reflection in my phone screen, arms crossed, watching from her SUV. She smiled, rolled up the window, and drove off. That image stuck with me. Not menace, just confidence born from believing nobody could touch her. I decided that would change. For the first time since my wife's death, I felt purpose that wasn't survival. It was defense of fairness itself, and maybe a promise to my kid that grown-ups could still fix things. If you've ever faced an HOA that went rogue, tell me in the comments, how did you push back? Or share one tactic so others can stand up too. And if you're one of those HOA officers lurking here, maybe leave your message for us down below. The law reads both ways. I looked at the countdown sticker on my fridge. 15 days from notarization meant deadline. Monday, June 3rd. 5 days left. We'd hear back soon, or the next move would be mine. June 3rd came and went without a single document from the HOA. No ledgers, no minutes, no audit summary, just silence thick enough to choke on. That same evening, a new violation notice showed up in my mailbox. Improper lighting fixture, non-conforming bulb color. I laughed out loud in the humid dusk. My porch light was factory white, 3000 Kelvin exactly. Mark found one too. Lawn height discrepancy, 3.5 inches. They'd measured grass. We sat on my steps, flipping through our stack of notices, when I realized what they were doing, burying us in paper to break morale. So I changed tactics. If they wanted to weaponize the rules, I'd master them better than they ever had. I spent 2 nights reading the state's administrative code. My daughter fell asleep to the sound of page turns and highlighters clicking. Somewhere between sections 47F 3103 and 3118, I caught the pattern. HOAs operate like corporations but with one fatal oversight. When they incorporate under an old developer entity, their authority expires once transition to residence isn't certified. It hit me like a dropped wrench. Our HOA's last amendment, 2018, was still filed under Leland Realty Development, LLC. That company had been dissolved in 2021, meaning, legally, Pine Hollow Estates had no standing to fine anyone at all. I checked the Secretary of State database 3 times to be sure. Dissolved June 14, 2021. Failure to maintain registered agent. The digital certificate flashed on screen, official seal glinting blue. My pulse hammered. That night, I called Allison. If the developer dissolved and never reassigned rights, what happens to enforcement? She paused. You just found their Achilles heel. Without assignment, every action after dissolution is ultra-virus, beyond authority. Keep it quiet until you need it. Reversal number 1 had been born. We'd let the board hang themselves a bit longer, piling violations on a rope that wasn't even legal. Meanwhile, I set my camera to time-lapse mode, capturing every notice delivery and timestamp. By week's end, my binder was thick enough to stand upright. Knowledge nugget number 3. When a declarant-controlled HOA fails to record transfer of declarant rights after corporate dissolution, any subsequent fines or amendments can be deemed voidable ab initio under state nonprofit statutes. I barely slept that weekend. Sunday morning brought drizzle, the kind that smells like wet concrete and mulch. I watched Karen's SUV glide past our house slow, eyes hidden behind aviators. She must have seen me filming from the window. The brake lights flickered once before she sped off. Mark stopped by holding a coffee thermos. "You ever think maybe we just sell and leave?" "Not after this," I said. "If we leave, she wins." He nodded. "Then what's next?" I tapped the binder. "We build a record they can't deny. Minutes, mail logs, photos. Then we set the stage for a public showdown." That night, I wrote a draft letter to the county ombudsman's office, summarizing the expired incorporation, the selective enforcement, and the refusal to release records. I didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. Let them keep thinking we were powerless until the meeting agenda dropped. And it did. June 15th, quarterly member session, financial updates, community matters. I highlighted it in yellow, circled it twice. Between now and then, we'd endure their pettiness. They escalated with speed limit citations, fence color variances, even a fake complaint about unauthorized play equipment. My daughter's swing set. Every new paper felt less like punishment, more like evidence. Late one evening, I found a torn envelope in my driveway. Inside was a photocopy of a bank statement header. Pine Hollow Estates operating account. Balance, $2,143.27. Anonymous sender, no note. That balance was dangerously low for a subdivision our size. They were broke. That explained the fine frenzy. They were patching a hole with our wallets. I kept the envelope, logged its discovery. June 10th, 8:34 p.m. Another puzzle piece slotted in. Toward midnight, I sat by the window, watching porch lights wink off one by one. The street looked peaceful again, like it used to. I whispered to myself, "We're going to fix this." For her. Meaning my daughter. Maybe for my wife too, in a way. She'd hated bullies, especially the bureaucratic kind. And for anyone reading or watching, I'll ask you this. How far should an HOA control what happens on your porch or lawn? Where's that line between keeping order and policing freedom? Tell me what you think down below. The clock ticked closer to the meeting date, and my secret leverage, those dissolved corporate papers, sat sealed in an envelope on my desk, ready for the moment they overreached one final time. I just needed patience. By the morning of June 15th, my printer had eaten through a full ream of paper. Everything, minutes, statutes, photos, timestamps, sat in one black accordion folder labeled Evidence Set A. My daughter made me coffee, said it smelled like determination. The meeting started at 6 o'clock p.m. sharp inside the clubhouse. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the air thick with pine sol and tension. I took a seat front row, folder at my feet. Karen sat in her usual throne position at the center table, lips pressed into what she probably thought was a professional smile. She started with announcements about landscaping and pool maintenance, reading off a tablet. Then she dropped the bait. "As of today," she said, "we're issuing new compliance guidelines. Non-conforming properties will face a $250 enforcement fee per incident. This is for the good of the community." A murmur went around the room. I waited until she looked up. "Question," I said evenly. "Under what authority does the board issue new fines, considering your corporate status dissolved in 2021? The silence was physical. Chairs creaked. Someone coughed. Karen blinked, then forced a laugh. "That's misinformation. We're in good standing." I slid my phone across the table toward her, screen lit with the Secretary of State certificate. Dissolved June 14th, 2021. No reinstatement, no successor filing. She reached for her gavel but didn't strike it. "We'll consult our legal counsel." "You'll need to consult a necromancer," I said quietly. A few neighbors stifled laughs. Her cheeks reddened. "This meeting is adjourned." "No," I said. "Under Article 9, a quorum of members may motion to continue if the board fails to fulfill transparency obligations." I looked around. "All in favor?" Hands went up. 10, maybe 12. Karen froze, realizing the bylaws she'd used to control us now bound her, too. The property manager whispered something in her ear. She grabbed her bag and stormed out, muttering about legal nonsense. The door slammed. I turned back to the crowd. "We're recording this continuation under member quorum," I said. "Please note the time, 6:43 p.m. Mark held up his phone camera. For the next 40 minutes, we documented missing financials, illegal fines, and unrecorded hearings. Every word captured, every paper signed. I could feel momentum shifting. Fear had changed sides. Still, I knew retaliation was coming. Karen wouldn't let humiliation end her reign. That night, around 10:30, I found tire tracks cut deep into my front lawn. My mailbox lay bent, its metal warped like it had been kicked. I filed a police report, handed Officer Nunez the photos. He looked at me with that half-apology cops give when they know the system's slow. "We'll keep an eye out," he said. It was hard not to take it personally, but I reminded myself, they're acting desperate because we're close. 2 days later, I got a letter, certified mail, from the HOA's attorney, Gregory Bell. The tone was pure intimidation. "Cease dissemination of defamatory statements. The HOA reserves right to pursue damages." I read it twice, then highlighted a line about unauthorized recording of board proceedings. That was a trap. They wanted me to panic. Instead, I checked the law. North Carolina allows one-party consent for recordings in non-confidential setting. Public HOA meetings qualify. I called Allison again. She laughed softly. "Greg Bell, he's a developer counsel, not HOA law. Paper tiger." "So we hold." "Hold," she said, "and document the next misstep." Meanwhile, the community started waking up. The mom who runs the daycare posted in our Facebook group, "Did anyone else notice the HOA stopped publishing budgets?" Within hours, 30 comments piled on. The board locked the thread by evening, but the screenshots had already spread. Mark suggested we call a press contact. I hesitated. Not yet. Let them sweat internally first. But he was right about one thing. Pressure worked. When power's used to silence, exposure is disinfectant. Before bed, I stood in the kitchen flipping through the folder. Each sheet had a small blue sticky in the corner, numbered and cross-referenced. I'd built an engineer's case file, a structure so exact they couldn't twist it without breaking it. I paused on one page. An old photo of my wife at the community picnic, laughing under the same oak that now held the HOA sign. For a moment, I smelled sunscreen and lemon bars and a life without conflict. Then I tucked the photo behind the front cover. She'd want me steady, not sentimental. And for you watching, let me throw a question your way. Fines versus fairness. $250, $500, $1,000 penalties. Are they community tools or just revenue schemes? Where's your limit? I'd love to see what you think below. When I turned off the light that night, the reflection of the binder's metal spine caught a sliver of moonlight. It looked almost ceremonial, like a blade waiting in its sheath. The next phase wasn't about proving wrong. It was about restoring right. 2 mornings later, a man in a county-marked sedan parked outside my driveway, camera mounted on a tripod. He introduced himself as Evan Ortiz, municipal compliance investigator. "We got an anonymous tip about construction without permit," he said. I gestured toward my untouched porch. He snapped photos anyway. When he left, I checked my email. 3. New HOA citations, all time-stamped within 20 minutes of his visit. That's when I knew they'd escalated to coordinated harassment. The strategy was simple: bury me in bureaucracy until I broke. But every knock they sent, I turned into a log entry. The harassment montage was in full swing: stacked inspections, wellness calls, passive-aggressive flyers about community harmony. They even slipped a note under my door saying, "Neighbors talk." I responded with silence and documentation. Cameras recorded every approach, sensors logged motion at precise times. Fear morphed into focus. Mark caught the first crack in their wall: the HOA's insurance carrier. His cousin worked at Tri-State Mutual, which underwrote Pine Hollow's liability policy. "They have to report pending legal exposure," he told me, sliding a printed policy excerpt across my kitchen counter. "If you file a formal compliance complaint, their premiums spike." The next morning, I did exactly that. Certified letter, full documentation, mailed 8:42 a.m. I could almost hear the domino clicking into place. Meanwhile, the fines kept coming. Another $125 for improper holiday lighting in June. I taped that one above my desk as motivation. Each piece of paper became fuel. Around that time, fatigue set in. I'd catch myself staring at the old family photo on my fridge, my wife, our daughter, a Saturday at the farmer's market before life fractured. My throat tightened. I wasn't just fighting a board. I was fighting the kind of powerlessness that had defined the worst year of my life. Friday night, I found my daughter drawing chalk again on the driveway. This time she looked up, hesitant. "Is this okay now, Dad?" I crouched beside her. "Yeah," I said. "This is your home. You draw wherever you want." The chalk squeaked bright yellow across the concrete. I could smell rain coming in the distance. Later, while she slept, I wrote my next move. A formal member enforcement action under Article 4.20, Section 4, remedy by declarant default. It was arcane, dusty law, but it granted temporary control to members if the board's authority lapsed. I had proof it had. The next day, Karen sent a neighborhood-wide email accusing certain individuals of fraud and false legal interpretations. Her language was reckless, potentially defamatory. I archived it immediately. When I met with Allison again Monday, she flipped through my binder, nodding. "This is textbook retaliation," she said. "You're one piece away from leverage." "What piece?" "Ownership." She smiled faintly. If declarant rights expired, whoever holds the last unsold parcel controls the covenants. Find that, and you own the rulebook. Knowledge nugget number 4. In many common interest communities, declarant rights, including covenant amendments and enforcement powers, transfer with the final unsold parcel or recorded assignment. Control can shift quietly with a deed. That night, I pulled property records for every lot. One stood out. Parcel 31A, Retention Basin Access Lot. Technically common property, but the deed still listed Leland Realty Development, LLC, as owner. Since that entity no longer existed, the parcel was considered abandoned. Under county code, abandoned declarant property could be purchased for taxes after notice. Taxes owed, $63.42. I paid them the next morning. In 21 days, barring objection, that small sliver of gravel and cattails would make me the successor to all declarant rights. The same rights Karen used to bully everyone. My hands trembled when I held the receipt. Half disbelief, half adrenaline. I didn't tell anyone yet, not even Mark. Secrets are safest when they look like patience. And for those following along, when an HOA retaliates with inspections and citations, what's fair? Response, fight, document, or walk away? Tell me where you draw that line, or at least like the video so others see what lawful persistence really looks like. By mid-July, the grass at Parcel 31A had grown knee-high, buzzing with crickets. I'd drive past and think, that's where this war ends. Not with shouting, but with paperwork filed quietly in triplicate. Still, I kept one eye open at night. Once, headlights paused outside the house for too long, then vanished. Fear visited, but didn't stay. Because now I had something stronger. Authority waiting in escrow. The clock was ticking, and Karen didn't even know her power had an expiration date. The tax sale closed on August 1st. The county clerk handed me a thin manila envelope stamped Deed Issued, Parcel 31A. The paper inside was ordinary, but my signature on it meant I now owned the last fragment of developer land in Pine Hollow. With it came the declarant rights Karen thought she still possessed. I remember the sound of that envelope snapping shut, a soft click like a lock turning in reverse. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't celebrate. I went home, filed the deed, and waited for the official recording notice to appear on the county's digital ledger. Once it did, timestamp 3:42 p.m. August 5th, I took a deep breath and wrote the first draft of the letter that would change everything. To Board of Pine Hollow Estates, HOA Inc. From Daniel Reeves, owner. Parcel 31A, declarant successor. Subject: Notice of rights transfer and temporary administrative oversight. Pursuant to Article X, Section 2, declarant authority now rests with undersigned pending lawful reconstitution. I sealed it, certified mail, sent to every board member and the property management company. No emotion, just process. Then I waited. 3 days later, Karen's SUV screeched into my driveway. She jumped out waving the envelope. "This is a stunt," she spat. "You can't buy a drainage ditch and call yourself God." I met her halfway down the path. "Not God," I said. "Just the person who now legally outranks your board." Her jaw worked silently, like a gear slipping its teeth. She shoved the letter back at me. "We'll sue you." "You'll need standing first," I said, then turned and walked inside. Through the window, I saw her hands trembling as she dialed someone on her phone. That night, thunder rolled through Franklin. Rain hammered the roof while I sat at the table with the binder open to a fresh page. Reversal number 1 executed. Leverage secured. Still, I didn't want destruction. I wanted reform. But to reform an HOA drunk on power, you had to take away its bottle first. By August 10th, the management company resigned, citing conflict of authority. Their email went to all residents. Half the neighborhood showed up on my lawn that evening. Someone brought folding chairs. Someone else brought donuts. "So what now, Dan?" Mark asked. "Now," I said, "we prove that power can serve, not threaten." I explained the plan, how we'd hold a lawful reconstitution meeting under my temporary authority, invite county oversight, and rebuild the board with term limits and transparent voting. People nodded, some crying quietly. It felt like the first breath after months underwater. Of course, Karen wasn't done. The next morning, she filed for an emergency injunction in county civil court, claiming unauthorized assumption of control. But her filing cited the same corporate entity that no longer existed. The clerk's note in red ink read, "Plaintiff lacks legal capacity. Dismissed without prejudice." I printed it, 3 copies, framed one for the binder. Mid-August brought a strange calm. Even the Facebook page went quiet. I used that silence to prepare the public meeting. Slide deck, printed exhibits, sequence of evidence. Visual beat number 1. I remember the scene the night before, the binder, the deed, and my daughter's chalk drawing of a rising sun beside them on the table. The smell of coffee and rain, mixed in the air. Next morning, 9 a.m. I got a call from Sergeant Nunez. "We're assigning an officer to the meeting, just in case," he said. "Your name's come up in a few heated calls." "Appreciate it," I told him. By 6 o'clock that evening, the clubhouse parking lot overflowed. The air was electric, the kind that prickles your arms before a storm. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed above rows of folding chairs. I stood at the podium, microphone cold against my thumb. "Good evening," I said. "As of August 5th, county record shows declarant rights transferred to Parcel 31A, my parcel. Tonight, we're going to fix what broke in this community." Karen sat in the front row, arms folded. I could see her nails digging into her palms. The audience leaned in as I projected slides: corporate dissolution, violation records, retaliatory fines, missing audits, the insurer correspondence. Each page hit like a drumbeat. "You can verify every document online," I said. "Nothing here is opinion. It's all time-stamped fact." Nunez stood quietly near the door, arms crossed, eyes watchful. His presence made the room feel balanced, lawful, anchored. I ended with this: no family should fear their own neighborhood. If we don't reform this board, the next generation inherits a dictatorship with better landscaping. Applause erupted. Even some former loyalists clapped. Karen's lips moved, but the words died before they reached the mic. "And before we go any further, tell me, what punishment fits HOA officials who trespass or harass homeowners? Fines? Removal? Something stronger? Let's set that precedent right here in the comments." As the meeting closed, Karen grabbed her purse and stormed out again, face pale, keys jangling. She didn't notice Sergeant Nunez quietly following to ensure no more mailboxes suffered that night. For me, the fight was finally visible to everyone. The next stage would decide whether this community burned or healed. The following week felt like an aftershock zone, quiet, but humming with unsettled energy. I knew Karen would regroup, and she did. On August 18th, an envelope arrived stamped private legal notice. Inside was a cease and desist from a new law firm, Branson Tate, accusing me of illegitimate seizure of governance and community destabilization. The irony almost made me laugh. I forwarded it to Allison. Within an hour, she called. "Their argument hinges on your deed not yet being entered into the HOA records," she said. "But state law recognizes county recording as controlling. They've got nothing." "Then we move forward," I said. She agreed. "Schedule the ratification meeting. Get a neutral authority present again, maybe the county ombuds or a notary." So we did. The date, August 25th. The agenda: reconstitute Pine Hollow Estates HOA with lawful leadership and reforms that would end the cycle of abuse. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down online. She posted on the community page, "Beware fraudulent claims of leadership. Do not attend illegal meetings." Replies exploded. Half the neighbors called her out, half hesitated. I didn't engage. Every keystroke leaves fingerprints, and I wanted mine clean. By that Friday, rumor had twisted into theater. Someone left a stack of fake flyers on porches claiming I planned to sell off the playground. The sheer pettiness was exhausting, but I had documentation. Always documentation. I filed it under Propaganda, tab 8. August 25th came hot and thick with humidity. The meeting took place outdoors this time, on the common lawn under string lights Mark borrowed from the coffee shop downtown. Nearly 40 people showed up. A notary sat near the front, stamping attendance sheets. Karen appeared last, escorted by 2 allies carrying folding chairs like shields. She took a seat near the center, chin high. I opened with the facts. Under the County's acknowledgement of Parcel 31A transfer, declarant authority legally resides here, I said, holding up the certified deed. But tonight, that authority ends, because we're returning it to the community through reformed bylaws. Gasps, then applause. I could see confusion twist across Karen's face. She'd come expecting tyranny. Instead, she found procedure. I projected the proposed reforms on a screen. Term limits, 2 years. Maximum of 2 consecutive terms. Mandatory annual audits, published to all members. Open records policy with digital access for residents. Independent ethics committee, elected by random draw. Fee rollback to pre-2021 levels until financial review completed. Anyone opposing transparency, speak now, I said. Karen rose. "You're setting a precedent for mob rule." "No," I said. "We're setting precedent for accountability." Sergeant Nunez, once again attending off-duty in uniform, raised his hand slightly. "Everything's lawful here, ma'am. I've reviewed the documents." His tone was calm but absolute. The tension broke like glass. Applause erupted again, louder this time. Karen's voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I shook my head. I already regret what this place became. Visual beat number 2. She turned to leave, the crowd parting like tidewater around her. Rain began to fall, just a mist at first, beating on her hair and the microphone I'd set on the table. The scene looked cinematic, a woman walking away under stormlight while the community she'd ruled reclaimed its voice behind her. Within an hour, votes were counted, 37 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstained. The new board, composed entirely of residents, was sworn in. For the first time, our signatures felt like small acts of peace. Afterward, we stood beneath the awning, watching the rain turn the chalk drawings on the walkway into a swirl of colors. Mark handed me a coffee and a paper cup. "So what now, Mr. President?" "Not president," I said. "Just caretaker until the paperwork's done." He smiled. "You know, you should tell this story somewhere bigger. People need to hear how to win without losing themselves." I thought about that. Maybe he was right. Maybe that's what my channel was for. And while we're standing here, tell me this. When it comes to recording HOA meetings for accountability, should it always be allowed, or does privacy still matter in a public community? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. That night, as the rain settled to a whisper, I placed the binder on the table and opened it to the first page, the old chalk fine, still crisp. I pressed my thumb to the corner and whispered, "Almost done." But not quite. There was one last piece left. Making sure this victory meant something lasting, not just for me, but for everyone who ever got silenced by a clipboard and a fine. The morning after the vote, sunlight hit the lawn like forgiveness. Dew shimmered on the wet grass where the crowd had stood the night before. My daughter came outside barefoot, holding the binder I'd left on the kitchen table. "You forgot your homework," she said, grinning. "Not homework," I told her. "Proof we did something right." We spent that day cleaning up the meeting area, folding chairs, picking up damp flyers, wiping the last traces of chalk from the walkway. It felt like sweeping away the old regime one leaf at a time. By the following week, the county had processed the Reformation documents. Pine Hollow Estates, HOA, reconstituted, officially recorded, new EIN issued. Karen's name was nowhere. She'd resigned formally, the letter dry and bureaucratic. But word spread that the state's real estate commission had opened an ethics inquiry into her undeclared developer ties. The domino collapse had begun. Within a month, Tri-State Mutual canceled the HOA's previous insurance policy due to misrepresentation of governance structure. The bank froze the operating account pending audit. Local news picked up the story. Neighborhood reclaims HOA after rogue leadership fallout. The segment showed a quick shot of me speaking at the meeting, binder in hand, mic slick with rain. Knowledge nugget number 5. Most HOA management firms require fidelity coverage and valid corporate standing for policy renewal. Lose either, and the whole system grinds to a halt until reforms are certified. Emails poured in from nearby communities asking for the template we used. Allison helped us draft a public version, the Pine Hollow Charter of Fair Housing Governance. We added a quote at the top from one of her notes. Authority without transparency is fraud by delay. Mark became treasurer, and he finally stopped sharpening mower blades just to calm his nerves. The new board hosted a welcome-back cookout, the first in 3 years, with name tags, barbecue, and a bounce house for the kids. Nobody checked grass height. Nobody fined anyone for laughter. Reversal number 2 came quietly one September morning. The county ombudsman called. We've reviewed your reforms. Pine Hollow now meets all compliance requirements. In recognition, we're designating your HOA as a model transparency community for the district. That was the trade, our leverage for structural reform, sealed with paperwork instead of revenge. I visited Parcel 31A that afternoon, the little retention lot that started it all. The cattails were gold from late summer sun. I placed the original deed in a weatherproof frame by the fence post, a small plaque reading, Property of Pine Hollow Estates residents, maintained in trust. Usual beat number 3. The wind rippled across the pond, and for a second the reflection of the clouds looked like a clean page waiting to be written on. That night, I recorded my final entry for the story. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, I said, say a few words in the comments for your own friend who might need to hear this. Subscribe so future videos reach you first, and share it, not for views, but for awareness. Because somewhere, another HOA thinks it's untouchable. Maybe they'll see this and remember the law belongs to everyone. My daughter leaned against the doorway, listening. So it's over? She asked. Over for us, I said. But every neighborhood has a next case. I looked around. The quiet street, the porch lights glowing warm, the faint smell of cut grass. For the first time in years, Pine Hollow felt like home again, not a battlefield. In the weeks that followed, 3 neighboring HOAs contacted Allison for guidance. She sent them the charter, pro bono. Karen's former allies either apologized or moved. The developer's nameplate came down from the clubhouse wall. And that chalk sun my daughter drew months ago. We painted it in permanent sealant on the community walkway, a small bright emblem against the concrete gray. Beneath it, we engraved one line, Fairness lives here. As for me, I still keep the binder, every notice, every stamp, every law, on the same shelf as my wife's photo. Because justice, like grief, doesn't vanish. It learns to live beside you. Next case starts when someone new decides enough is enough.